Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking apart the George Foreman grill. This is the Foreman grill from probably about Lean Mean Fat Grilling Machine. But we'll just call it grill because I think George Foreman even just calls it he called it the Lean Mean Fat Grilling Machine. But it is the one from probably about 10 years ago, and they kind of keep redesigning it. Now we use this one a lot, or we used to use it a lot, and we kind of don't use it as much recently, but we definitely still use it. And what we're going to be doing today is taking it apart to see how it works. And in case you're not familiar with it, it's got these plates on here, and these are all interchangeable. With all different kind of cooking plates you can put on there. And they are all heated by what's underneath here. Get that out of the way. Okay, now those are the real cooking plates. There and there. And curious, look at there. Those definitely don't come off, or don't come off easily. Pressure fitted onto these little hexagonal studs, but I don't think there's not going to be a lot of disassembly. Basically, I think it's just going to be the top and bottom big main plates held on by these screws. 5 on the bottom, and I count 7 on the top. And really no screws in the back, so I'm thinking it's the type of thing where it hooks into slots and then screws down to save on screws, maybe. But underneath, let me see here. Okay, as you can see, it's got vent holes on the bottom, but not on the top, not anywhere, not even in the back. There's a little tiny openings like on the side, and that might be something we determine is why it's got vent holes on the bottom and not on the top, because there's definitely 2 cooking surfaces. And right there is the area where the plug comes in. There might be something interesting in there. Now right there, that hinge there, that is controlled by this lever here, and that just controls the angle of the whole thing because of the way it works. If the lever pushes up on that, it tilts the whole machine forward so that it can drain. Anyway, that's the basic overview of what it looks like, and next scene I should have all these screws off on the top and bottom and get a good look at what's in there. Alright. Okay, I've got all the screws out of the bottom portion of it, and I can already see, verifying what I was saying, just clips on the top, because a clip will hold it down as long as there are screws on the rest of it, and so that I don't know, I guess they're trying to save on screws by doing that, but you can see, pulling it out, that those are just clips. And so let me try to get this off here. Oh yeah, another special note. You see right there, there's an extra screw there, a star bit. Now usually when they're using a special bit like that, you know it's something that they don't advise, or they really don't want you to open it up, because that's a little more unusual to use a star bit. But in this particular case, now I have already opened it, that's why I know what's going on. In this particular case, that entire screw right there is simply holding a retainer to keep that wire up off the bottom, or to keep it where they wanted to put it. Otherwise, what I see here is exactly what I was thinking. Basically just 2 wires to a heating element that is fused to that plate, that cooking plate. And there's where it attaches. And I could take those clips off and take this completely off, but there's definitely no reason. Now, this is the type of thing right here, if you look at that, this is the type of reason why I take things apart, because sometimes there's some pretty neat surprises, and then there's some other times there are dangers. Now what that is that's grease or fat that has built up down there, and it's a good distance away from the cooking plate. But still, if that were to continue to build up, that's the type of thing, of course, grease is flammable. If it were to come into contact with that plate, it could light. So that tells me that, let me put this a little bit back together, that bottom plate. That tells me that when this one is on, shockingly, now this is where it's supposed to drip off the end and into this collector dish that I don't have out here right now. And right there, there's no way, I don't think that it can double back and come back up and into there. So it is a little bit of a mystery as to how it's getting in there. It's possible it's running through the back. That's actually probably where it is going through. Well, I think that now there's a lot of greasy and fatty buildup right up there that we're always having to clean, because as things cook, of course, all the vapors go up, and you know, as you can see, all this residue kind of out the back and out the side. But some of it might, with the way it definitely builds up there, I think a lot of it goes back down. And whereas you have a ridge right around there, if it's evaporating up and over the ridge and back down, then it can definitely go into that crack right there. So that must be what's happening. That must be how all that grease got in there. And so just that's something that I'm going to have to keep in mind, and something I have to open it up and clean that pretty often, because that would be a design issue. Anyway, that's about it for the bottom plate. Let's open up the top plate. Now that one's going to have basically the same thing, but it'll also have this control on there. And something I was going to point out, if you see here, this little spring-loaded thing, it is your temperature sensor. As you can see on the plate there, where it's been coming into contact, it pushes up against the plate as opposed to the cooking plate to give you the exact temperature on the cooking surface. And that sends a signal back to the thermostat and tells it when to turn on and off. Anyway, I'll take this top plate off now and we'll see what's under there. Okay, so I've got all those screws out on the top now, and we're going to take a look and see what's inside the top section. And of course it's exactly like the bottom section, same heating element. Oh, on a side note, I was saying before, these little studs here, hexagonal studs, means that this plate doesn't come off. But they do come off from the back. You just undo those nuts and you could take the whole plate off. And so, yeah, and it looks like the element is attached to the plate. So if something were to burn up on one of these, you would be able to replace a plate. Other than that, you just have your regular old wires. No retainer on this side because they looped it around this support here. And then up there, you have the back of your dial, which is, let me get this one. The back of your dial is right there. And then these are the backs of the lights one that says that the element is on. There. And the other one says that it's up to temperature, and you're good to go. Now, of course, here is the dial. This is the thing controlling everything. And I'm going to get a really good look at that in a moment. Just wanted to show that all the way to the left is off, and to the right is high, and it's got the other stages, low, medium, and high. And at my first glance on this, that's the, I apologize for this, just a moment. There. Okay. At first glance, I'm looking at this and I was saying to myself, I'm looking at that contact right there, and I was saying, okay, this is just a 3-setting switch. There's no in between, and that it's not variable. But as it turns out, that is just the overall contact. It's just on or off. And I'll get back to that in a moment. That thing you heard falling was the back of the controller has come out of the hole. Okay, so now getting back to this, it's a curious little thing. I am not going to say it's on high right now. I think it's on high. Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, so that would be high and medium and low, and then when you go all the way to off, it breaks the contact there. Trying to get even closer. There we go. But I think this thing, of course, this part right here, get the screwdriver in there. This part in there is the other side of that temperature sensor there. And so that reacts to the heat. And so if it's up to temperature, it somehow turns this off. Now, I'm not going to theorize on exactly how this contraption here works, because I've learned not to state something as fact. But, okay, so if I come around to the other side and I push up on the sensor, there it is, pushes up on that, and if it were hot, I think it would be reacting differently, because I think at a certain point, when it gets up to temperature, it gets hot enough, kind of like a thermocouple, to the point where it will break the contact and stop applying heat, or stop applying electricity. Because as you go around to the hotter side, you'll see the whole thing bend. See that? All the way to the left is back off again. And that sort of thing must be happening as it gets hot and cold as well. So I'm going to try not to theorize. I have a theory, but I'm not going to say it on that, but it must be very common the way these work. And that's what you have inside the Foreman grill. It works really well. However, that's working. It certainly is pretty neat. Other than that, I see no inline resistors or anything like that. And there's no transformer coming in. Just wires coming straight in. That's the other side of that other plate. So it's using all the power that the element can draw according to what this is telling it to do. And that's pretty good. Okay, now as for the rest of it, on this top plate, I'm happy to see there's no buildup of grease in there as we found on the bottom. There's a little bit on the back there. See there? Which would basically be the same seam that I was talking about was the trouble on the bottom. But with gravity, the way gravity will be pulling it down, not up, not as much got in there. but it's definitely built up on the bottom. Let me get this out of the way. And oh yes, the other thing, before I opened it up, I was stating that there were all these slots in the bottom, like to ventilate the heat, but there were no slots in the top. And I think I figured out why. It's because the bottom is made out of plastic and the top is made out of aluminum. So the top is able to dissipate the heat just through the aluminum much better than it could through plastic, like without melting the plastic. So I think that if the bottom had been aluminum, they wouldn't have had to put those slots in there, and so I think that's the answer to that question. And I cannot think of anything else to say here. But that is everything. It's been a great machine, and we will continue to use it. It's been going for a long time, and I think it'll go for a lot longer, but we're going to clean all the grease out of there and stay aware that that happens, and probably open it up maybe once a year. What you're looking at is about, under there was about 10 years of buildup. And that was, a lot of hamburgers. Lots and lots and lots of hamburgers. So if that's all that builds up in 10 years, that's not bad. But if you have one of these, I suggest you take off. It's really easy to get these 5 screws off. Take it off, get the grease out of there, and put it back together. And that will, add that much more safety to it. So that wraps it up. That is the George Foreman grill. Lean, mean, I always forget all the words. Lean, mean, fat grilling machine. And that's what you see inside there. So stay tuned for lots more if you enjoy this sort of thing. This is something I do pretty often. If you look in our playlist, I know we have mostly Legos and stuff. If you look in the playlist, we have a separate playlist for taking things apart called What's Inside. So please subscribe and check us again for a lot more updates like this. And everybody have a good night. Bye.